Modern progress in Niger is very slow, but inexorable. The Bozos are the anchorage to the traditional world on the river, unarmed people before the avalanche of progress. The Peul people of Niger, on the contrary, have adapted easier to the challenges of modernity. The Peul people have historically been nomadic cattle breeders in Western Africa. More than 6,000 individuals scattered between Senegal and Chad, always in search of new pastures in order to feed their animals. The drought in the 70s and 80s decimated the Peuls more than any other group of the many who inhabit Niger. Thousands of heads of livestock died, and many of those who survived felt obligated to opt for a sedentary life on the banks of the river. In the 19th century, the Peul of the Niger Basin underwent another wave of sedentary life, although that time it was for religious reasons. The so-called Massina Empire, headed by the chiefs of the Peul, asserted their authority over the local populations by killing and burning them. The Islamic flag flew in a territory that was traditionally animist, governed by the genies of the river that little by little came to share with a foreign god their power over the men who inhabited the waters. The Peul settled in stable towns, but continued to live off cattle and to trade with other groups that shared the river with them. Because the Niger has always been an authentic natural frontier, an inevitable meeting point among Bozo fishermen, Bambara farmers, and Peul shepherds. On the banks, in the markets that are held daily in any of the towns, many people come to trade products in a symbiosis of centuries that not even progress has been able to void. The bar dining room area is located on top of the boat. It is a reserved area, so only first-class passengers can enter. Fanta is there with 2 medical students who are returning with their families to Timbuktu at the end of the semester.
How did everything go at the university?
Well, there were a lot of problems. The same as other years, you know. People go on strike every chance they can.
But why? What is the reason? I thought that medical students usually went to school. You took exams, right?
Yes, at school we took our exams. Our demands were satisfied, and we had no other choice but to go back to class. The students went on strike because the working conditions were so bad. There were no classroom materials, and the scholarships arrive late, if they ever arrive at all.
Yes, the same thing happens at my college. To begin with, we have 4,000 students sharing small classrooms, and the professors do not always show up. Between student strikes and the absence of the professors, we haven't had even half of the classes. The system needs to change, not only the school.
Alassane Abba is an elected member of the National Assembly in the city of Gundam. He is returning to his hometown after having participated in a special parliamentary session.
I think that our political situation is going well. We have acquired a high level of democracy. Anyone who knows what the country was like before 1991, compared to how things are today, will know that I'm telling the truth. Freedom of expression is something that no one can deny. Like the spreading of the radio stations known as free radios. They are everywhere, in Bamako, as well as in the interior of the country. Then we have the case of women, of the representation of women at all levels of government. In any job today, there are women. This shows that things are going well. I don't agree with turning my back on certain practices, the traditional ones. I'm going to tell you a story. One morning, I saw a woman who was about to mutilate the genitals of a little girl, and I said to her, "Don't you know that this practice is archaic?" She responded by saying that it was a woman's business and that men should not get involved.
Mahamadou Maiga is a lieutenant colonel in the Mali Air Force and the High Commissioner of the Timbuktu region. He is coming from Bamako with his family, who just enjoyed spending their vacation in the capital.
Everyone knows that Timbuktu is a mystical city, but few people know about the difficulties that people go through to survive there. The main problem is isolation, which stops many development programs, but even more importantly, the water problem. The channels of the river do not reach the city anymore, and it is more difficult to obtain potable water for humans as well as for the animals. It may surprise you to learn that the women's associations of Timbuktu, are the ones that are carrying out the projects in the fight against the advancing sands.
The Kankan Musa slowly moves on, with an appetite open to the scorching breeze of the desert, which takes over the landscape inch by inch. Timbuktu is close, and its presence is not uncertain, as it was for the feverish European minds that in the 19th century considered the mysterious city, alongside the source of the Nile, to be the last great secret to be discovered in Africa. The African Society of Paris offered 10 million francs to the first European to visit and bring back news about Timbuktu. René Caillé, leaving from the Atlantic, and Alexander Gordon Lang, leaving from the Mediterranean, started the journey almost at the same time. Lang arrived first, but upon returning, he was attacked by bandits who killed him. And Caillé, a man of humble descent, made his goal 2 years later, on April 20th, 1828. he made it back to tell about it. He was rewarded the money and began telling his story with a very disappointing statement that has lived on to today. He said, "Timbuktu is completely contrary to a luxurious city overflowing with gold." And so the splendor of Timbuktu, then an oasis on the shores of the Niger, was only experienced during the 16th and 17th centuries. Gold, salt, fabrics, and slaves were traded in impressive amounts. Although according to journalists at that time, these were not the most valued products, but rather books were. Books brought from Berber that were used by the imams and al-faqirs who flooded the city.
The mission of this center is primarily to collect, exploit, conserve, and disseminate the ancient manuscripts. This center was established by UNESCO in order to conserve the ancient manuscripts of the Niger area. At present, we have classified 15,000 manuscripts, but we also have 100,000 copies that drink from all the fountains of knowledge: music, economics, Islamic sciences, poetry, and Arabic literature. We correspond in Arabic with dealers located in Timbuktu and others in the Maghreb. There is important information about the price of merchandise, slaves, gold, and paper. Especially paper, that at that time was a deeply desired merchandise. Around the 16th century, in Timbuktu, there were about 250,000 inhabitants, and 1/4 of them were students that used gazelle skin parchment.
Khalil Touré is one of the leaders of the Arma community of Timbuktu. The Arma people are descendants of an army originally from the Spanish city of Granada, who under the service of the King of Morocco invaded Niger at the end of the 16th century. Since then, they have been the true aristocrats of Timbuktu.
The city of Timbuktu, after many droughts, is facing many difficulties, and we could say that its survival is at risk. It is suffering due to the lack of transportation and to isolation. It is the most isolated region in the Republic of Mali. If there were means of transportation, if there were highways, the economy would reestablish itself, and we could maybe say Timbuktu would survive another century. Now we only have one plane that comes a few times a week, and the river barges. This is the only kind of trading that we can carry out. But we are fighting, putting some projects into practice in order to recuperate water and reinforce the roads, fighting so that Timbuktu does not die.
Centuries before, this austere and neglected market was the greatest trade center for hundreds of kilometers around. Until the 12th century, the place that today occupies the city was nothing more than one of the many wells scattered throughout the desert that the Tuaregs would use. In the desert, the wells have been drying up, and the sand is taking possession of the decrepit walls like an assassin of mystery. If there ever were secrets to be kept, they have also been devoured by the sand. But then these women are here, eternally installed on the shores of disaster, constantly spreading hope. Only they grant permanence to a universe adrift. The women of Sahel, the traders of Niger, are the true genies of the river.